Micro-observers. A Government of India or a central public sector undertaking employee not below Group C can be deployed as a micro-observer at a polling station location. Micro-observers, where deployed, report to the general observers of the Election Commission in the constituency, are trained by them in advance and also supervised by them. A micro-observer is required to obtain his appointment letter, I-card, etc. from the DEO and to reach the dispatch center on his own for further movement to the polling station with the polling team. He reaches the PS at least 1 hour before commencement of poll or on the previous day, depending on the brief and the directions he receives. He would return to the receipt center also with the polling team. He can exercise his franchise using postal ballot or EDC like any other person on poll duty. When posted at a location which has more than one polling station, he is responsible for all the polling stations at that location and would divide his time between all these PSs and keep visiting them frequently, making his availability known to the polling agents. He has a number of responsibilities and undertakes a range of tasks, including attending trainings and briefing to understand the guidelines and instructions of the Commission and to carefully take note of the directions given by the observer. Taking the details of the communication plan from the RO, assessing the preparedness of the PS for the poll. This would include checking on the presence of the various members of the polling party and security personnel at the polling station, the availability of various material and facility there, and timely completion of all arrangements and preparations for the poll. To be present at the time of mock poll, to note down the time and other details of mock poll. To observe proper deletion of mock poll data from the EVM before commencement of actual poll and proper filling up of mock poll certificate. To keep an eye on the presence of candidates' agents, etc. in the PS both during mock poll as well as actual poll. To check whether more than one polling agent of one candidate is present inside the polling station at any time. To observe whether the entry pass system for agents is being followed or not. To observe whether the voters were identified by verifying EPIC or other permitted documents before being permitted to vote. Observing proper entry of identification document particulars in the Register of Voters Form 17A. To observe whether voting compartment was properly placed to ensure secrecy of voting. Observing whether the presiding officer or polling officer went towards the voting compartment to influence voting or to give any undue instructions to the voters. Observing whether due care was taken in accordance with the ECI guidelines before allowing any voters whose names appear in the ASD list to vote. To observe whether the polling booth has been visited by sector officer or not. To observe whether the total of votes in the EVM is compared on hourly basis with that of Form 17A. To check whether polling agents were allowed to note down the serial numbers of the ballot unit and control unit and green paper seal. To check whether the list of voters issued with postal ballots or EDCs are available with the presiding officer and polling agents. To observe whether any unauthorized person was inside the polling station at any point of time. To observe whether marking of indelible ink on left forefinger of voter was done properly. To check whether the PRO is duly keeping record of events in the PS as required. Checking whether sealing of voting machine and other material was done according to ECI instructions. To note down whether copies of accounts of votes recorded in Form 17C have been given to the polling agents at the end of poll. Keeping track of complaints, if any, at the PS by the candidate's agents or anybody else while understanding the nature and seriousness of such complaints. Bringing to the notice of the general observer at the earliest possible if he feels that the poll is being vitiated for any reason at any time. After the poll, reporting back to the general observer at the collection center and handing over the envelope containing his report to him. Any other responsibilities as may be entrusted to him by the Commission or by the observer. Remember, in no situation a micro-observer will act as a presiding officer or a polling officer. His task is to observe that the election process is free and fair and that there is no vitiation of poll. A micro-observer can be deployed for more than one phase of polling also. When deployed at a multiple PS location, he shall be in charge of all PSs at that location unless otherwise directed. He works under supervision of the General Observer of the Commission in the constituency and gives his report in the prescribed format in sealed cover to him at the receipt center. A micro-observer must report any special incident to the General Observer at the earliest using the available modes of communication. The micro-observer needs to remain present at the time of post-poll scrutiny to provide inputs to the General Observer whenever needed. His report should also be taken into consideration during such scrutiny. The PROs and poll personnel should extend all required cooperation to micro-observers for discharge of their assigned duties. Format for report of micro-observers. Whether mock poll has been conducted in presence of micro-observers. Whether data of mock poll from the ballot unit was cleared and the EVM count was set to 0 after the mock poll and before the beginning of the actual poll. How many polling agents and of which political party were present during the mock poll? Whether more than one polling agent from the same political party were present inside the polling station at any time. Whether polling agents were allowed to note the serial numbers of balloting unit and control unit and green paper seal. Whether the entry pass system was enforced properly. Whether any unauthorized person was inside the polling station at any point of time. Whether marking of indelible ink on left forefinger was done properly. Whether the identification document particulars were being filled up meticulously in Register of Voters Form 17A. Whether the list of votes issued with postal ballot was available with the presiding officer and polling agents. Did any person already issued postal ballot appear to vote again in person? Whether any person cast a vote on the basis of EDC. Whether events are recorded from time to time as and when they occur in the presiding officer diary. Whether the presiding officer or polling officer was going towards voting compartment or giving any undue instructions to the voters. Whether the scrutiny of voters in the absentee, shifted and duplicate list was done meticulously by the presiding officers in accordance with ECI guidelines. Whether copies of accounts of votes recorded in Form 17C have been given to the polling agents. Whether voting compartment was properly placed to ensure secrecy of voting. Whether sealing of voting machine was done according to instructions. Whether any complaint by polling agent, election agent or any political party was received. If yes, its substance. Any other incident or issue that you would like to highlight. This annexure should be signed by the micro-observer giving his full name, designation, phone number, date and time.